Well, there, everyone is there. Okay. So yes, let's go. Maxime, thank you for being there. Thank you for giving us some time. It's going to be a webinar in English, of course. You work for GiveAction. I will let you present yourself. We are really pleased to have you here. We, as part of the services and the action we take, we try to promote webinars and ways to inform people about different topics of sustainable IT or that are closed. And thank you, Maxime. Indeed, our action is to promote good practices, to share knowledge and experience. That's the idea of the webinar here. We provide tools, guidelines, guides, trainings, and so on to address sustainable IT. We try to exchange with a lot of different organizations, public services, companies, universities as well, and we try to help them to make sure they can exchange between them. And so overall, the idea of the Institute is to support organizations that wants to undergo a sustainable IT initiative. And so for that reason, we have indeed, thank you, Maxime, we have a lot of members that are joining us, that are using our services to address sustainable IT, and we are really pleased to have them. It's thanks to them that we can organize those free and public webinars. So without our members, this cannot happen, and we cannot invite Maxime to talk about what we'll talk about today. So once again, I would like, and we would like, with the team, with Olivier, Sarah, and Lancelot, we would like to thank all members, because without you, it's not possible. So I know that we have members in the room. Other ones, other people from other organizations are not members yet, but feel free to reach out to us if you want to know more. And that's it. I will stop there. Maxime, can you present yourself in a quick words, what you do, where does GiveAction from? So floor is yours.
Yeah, indeed, just a few words about myself and a quick overview of my background. Thank you, Jules, for the intro. So basically, I have a background of a business engineer. So I studied in Brussels at Solvay. Then I worked at a big multinational. It was a great experience, but at that time I realized that I wanted to have a bigger impact, the classic search for more sense. And so we basically, with two other friends, we set up the company GiveActions. So I'm one of the co-founders. So there is also Elias, who is basically one of my best friends since secondary school, and Gaspar, who is my cousin. And so we set up the company in 2019 called GiveActions. So we did quite a lot of things. I'm not going to enter into too much details, but since the beginning, basically, our aim is to change consumption behaviors to meet climate objectives. So we think that in order to meet climate objectives and to reach this ecological transition, we need to all change as citizens the way we consume, the way we behave, and the way we do things. And so in order to reach that goal, our objective is to give visibility and more visibility possible to positive impact brands, products, and services. And so today we are kind of a committed media agency. So we help positive impact brands to gain visibility on big Belgian media. That's what you can see on the picture on the right. So translation would be committed brands must become the new standard, and this billboard will help them to gain visibility. So we help them to gain visibility on big Belgian media like GiveActions, web radios, digital newspaper and stuff, and also on social networks like LinkedIn. For those who follow me, you know that already. And so we help SMEs with a positive impact like Fairphone, Triodos Bank, Casidomi, but also NGOs like Greenpeace, Red Cross, etc. So of course, since more than 4 years now, we find all the solutions at our disposal to help positive brands gain visibility. And so one of them is advertising. And so we had to investigate quite a lot this industry to make sure that it was okay to use it. And we realized that, of course, there are a lot of issues in this industry, a lot of things that need to change if we want to reach this ecological transition. But the good news is that there are also a lot of solutions to make it evolve. And so that's all this investigation and these thoughts that I'm going to share with you today. And just a few words on a personal note. For those who follow me on LinkedIn, you know that already, but I'm also quite active against greenwashing. I would say I'm kind of an activist because I think that greenwashing is really something that needs to stop because it slows down the transition because people don't know what to believe. And so these are two examples. On the left, it's an ad from Lufthansa I filed a complaint against, and it was accepted by the ethics jury. So Lufthansa had to remove this ad. And on the right, it's TUI would change its logo to the green one with the leaf. And I condemned that on LinkedIn, and they changed it back, so it worked. So it's a great way to do something. Of course, I'm not just only condemning. Of course, the aim is also to educate the market, because I think we would all better off without greenwashing. And so that's why we're also going to talk about greenwashing today, and to have a look at the different greenwashing cases that exist in order to avoid them.
Okay, nice. Quick poll, 2 questions. The first one will be, I hope it will work. So it should appear on your screen, Maxime. Does it appear on the screen as well? I don't know.
Not on mine.
Okay, Olivier, can you tell me if it does? Active, yeah, it should be. So you should see a poll, and it allows you to ask and to respond to a question. Do you work in communication, advertising, or marketing? Yes, no, partially. So if you do work, you can no, mostly yes. So 43% yes at the moment, 50% no, some partially yes. So yes, majority of people that are working in communication, advertising, marketing. Great. So if we take also the partially, because for example, I use LinkedIn for the institute, but it's not my only job. So yes, mostly we have marketeers or communication profile. So that's okay. And second question, let's hope it works. Yes, it does. Okay, perfect. The question of the webinar, is advertising compatible with ecological transition? Yes, no, it depends. Feel free to answer. It's gonna start a debate.
The $1 billion question.
Yeah. It depends. 62%. Nice. That's the best answer.
Okay, so let's try to find an answer to this difficult question. So usually when I ask this question to people, there are 2 types of answer. The first is that no, it's not compatible, because today advertising as one goal is to make people buy, and so it promotes consumption, and usually overconsumption, and sometimes polluting products. On the other hand, some people say yes, because it's also a way to make discover new consumption alternatives, and so without that it would be impossible to discover new things. So basically those answers are both right, because it really depends on what we spotlight. And so this example really highlights this. If you have an ad on the left for a bike versus on a car, a fuel car, you can see that the manufacturer, for the manufacturer, there is a multiplying factor of 130. And so, of course, it's huge. If you sell a bike versus you sell a car, the impact of advertising will really depend. So this is the first, basically, impact of advertising, is the product and services that we spotlight. The thing is, advertising and communication in general is not only about the products and services that we spotlight, it's also about ideals, creation, representation of the society that we create. And the issue is that today, most of them are not aligned with climate objectives. So I'm going to share with you some examples to illustrate that. The first one is these 4 car ads examples. So basically on these car ads, there is one common point, and it's basically almost the case on all car ads. It's basically the big space. So on almost all car ads, you have these big spaces, this big landscape, and basically the aim is to make us think that having a car is freedom. When you have a car, you can go wherever you want, whenever you want. It's completely the freedom. And so this can lead to issue when we try to reduce the use of cars. And the examples in the cities of Paris or Brussels are good examples. Because when we try to reduce this use, some people claim that we take away the freedom. And so it can be basically a break to the ecological transition. These are 2 other examples. On the left, there is Coke, who is, of course, really good at branding. And so they really succeeded in making us think that just by taking a Coke, we will enjoy the time, the night will be fine, etc. And so that we'll enjoy the moment. While actually Coke is super bad for health, so it's not really a good moment normally. And on the right, you have an ad for Brussels Airlines, so an airline company. So the translation would be, hold on, it will be okay. What if you book for after? And so by doing so, they create the impression that when we take holiday, we need to take the plane, and that we need planes to basically enjoy a time. While of course we can enjoy life while I don't know, going to France, going to the sea, whatever. When you Google basically a holiday, you have one picture out of two that is a plane. And that is an issue because we all think that holiday is a synonym of taking the planes, while of course we need to reduce the use of planes. So all these examples show that advertising today creates ideals and representations for the society that are not aligned with the climate objectives. And of course, it also promotes consumption. There is a really good report from Communication and Democracy, and basically they carried out an analysis, and they realized that advertising and marketing led to a 5.3% increase of consumption in 30 years, so only due to advertising consumption. And so today, advertising leads to an increase of consumption, while we need to be more sober and we need to reduce this consumption. And of course, there is the case of greenwashing. We'll talk quite a lot about that. And this example is a bit funny, but it's of course a great example to illustrate that it can slow down the ecological transition. On the other hand, of course, as we said earlier, there are examples of virtuous advertising. And the case on the left is quite good concerning that. It's basically a French brand called Murphy, and they repair household appliances. And so they did an ad saying, the only thing we try to sell you, do not buy. So this is really great because it highlights that we first need basically to repair before buying. And if you work with ISIT, so the Institute for Sustainable IT that organizes this event, you know that for most devices, the impact comes from the manufacturer, not from the use. So it's super important to try to increase the product lifetime. So this kind of ad is of course super good and virtuous. And on the right, you have an ad to download the IPCC report. So it's also of course a great initiative. So if we sum up, today advertising has an impact at three main levels. The first is the product and services that we spotlight. The second is linked to communication because it will create ideals that are contrary to the transition. And there's also the case of greenwashing. And the third is carbon impact, and we're going to talk about that later. But then if I need to give an answer today, I would say that in general, advertising is not compatible with the ecological transition for all these reasons. But the good news is that the advertising of tomorrow can be. So we'll have a look later on to see what the solutions are, of course. So that's it for this part.
The next and so the next question will be, but it's an easy answer, I guess. But should we stop using advertising at all? I think the response is no, but you can explain us why. Or yes, if I'm correct.
To be honest, we really ask ourselves the questions at GiveActions because, like, okay, we are going to use advertising. Is it a good solution for the society as a whole? The thing is, the question is more complex than that in the sense that today, advertising is really rooted in our society, and our society really relies on advertising. Without advertising, you do not have media, you do not have press, you do not have free press, and these are super important for democracy as well. Without advertising, you don't have a search engine that is free, you don't have websites that basically exist thanks to advertising, you don't have bus shelters, the public transport would be more expensive because they reduce the price thanks to advertising as well. So it would create a lot of issues if we stop advertising. And as we said also earlier, advertising can also be used to create new things and to spotlight good products and services. So if we use it in the good way, we should not stop using it. We should not stop using it. However, I do believe that we need to reduce the use of advertising. As we saw, advertising leads to an increase of consumption, and so that's an industry that needs to decrease, in my opinion. Probably we're going to talk about that. Some products and services needs to stop doing advertising as well, the most polluting ones. So I think we should decrease the use of advertising, and we will all better off with less advertising, but not stopping it entirely.
Okay. So next we'll jump, I guess, into, you can present the different types of greenwashing because we spoke about the greenwashing, but it's always good to have like the basics. Yeah. So if you can start with I think it's 6 types, if I'm correct.
6 classic cases indeed,
Okay.
with the 2 bonuses.
Yeah.
So let's have a talk indeed about greenwashing. So before starting, just a definition to make sure that we are all on the same page. So greenwashing are basically all the marketing and communication techniques that are used to give and to create a positive image of ecological commitment, but that is false, that is basically misleading because it's contrary to reality. And so this is something that we need to tackle because, as we said earlier, it slowed down the transition because we do not know as citizens, as consumers, even if consumer is probably not the best word to use, what to believe basically. And so we're going to have a look at the different examples so that we can, as citizens, identify them. And if you work in communication or advertising, you can do whatever you can to avoid them, of course. So the first one is the disproportionate promise. So this is a quite old ad from Renault. So basically it's an ad for an electric car, and the ad says to fight pollution, drive your car. Of course, this is misleading because it's not because you have an electric car that you will not pollute by using it. You still need to create the energy. And of course, there is also the manufacture of the car. So this is misleading, and the promise is too big, it's disproportionate. So it's a case of greenwashing. Another example is the one of Patagonia. To be fair to Patagonia, it's not Patagonia who did that, but their agency, and they did not ask the approval of Patagonia. But anyway, it was basically a mail sent to the clients, and the title of the mail was "How to Protect the Oceans with Clothes This Summer." So basically, they launched a new product made from recycled fibers from nets that they took away from oceans, and so the aim was to create a clothes with recycled fibers. But the issue is that the title is too big, is disproportionate. It's not because you buy a cloth that you protect the ocean, because by making the clothes, you will, of course, emit CO2, you will use products and stuff, and so it will have an impact on the planet. And so this is also a case of greenwashing because it's too big. The promise is disproportionate. A solution to avoid that is to use words like contribute to. So on the left example, we would have like to contribute to the fight against pollution, drive an electric car. This would be okay because you're not saying that the electric car fights on itself the pollution, you just say that it contributes to the pollution. And for Patagonia, it would be how to contribute to the protection of oceans with clothes this summer. So by using this kind of words, you minimize basically the promise, and so you are not in a case of disproportionate promise. So let's move on to the second case. So in this case, there are basically 2 types of greenwashing because it happens quite a lot that they overlap. So basically, this case is an ad for a Fiat 500, and basically they made an offer when we buy a car, there is a percentage of the amount that is given to an NGO that fight pandemics. And so they used the tagline, drive a red, to fight pandemics. And so this is a case of disproportionate promise because it's not because you drive the car that you will fight against pandemic, of course. So this is again an example of the first case. But at the bottom of the ad, there was also the sentence designed for the planet, designed for humanity. So this is a case of vague words. When you say it's designed for the planet, why is it designed for the planet? It's the same for instance, like the eco-responsible product, or a product good for your health, or a product good for the environment. By using these words that are quite vague, we do not know what is true or not, and so you really need to give more information if you use these words. A good example was an ad from a spa, so a water company. They basically launched a carton packaging, and they said the packaging better for the environment. And then there was an arrow on the ad saying because there are 70% less plastic than before. So you give directly an explanation of why it's better for the planet. And so if you are not doing so, we cannot know as citizens what is true or not, and so you can be in a case of greenwashing. The third example, this is probably the most common one, is the use of two suggestive visuals. So on the left, you have the case of Lufthansa, and on the right, case of Lavazza, so a coffee brand. And so both are using basically the planet. And so this is typically the definition of greenwashing that I gave you before. It's trying to give you a better image with an association of nature with your brand. But in the case of planes, for instance, it's not correct because, of course, planes has a big impact on the planet. So you cannot use a visual of nature, of the planet, etc., to basically associate this positive impact with your brand. And so this can be a case of greenwashing. And so there are very few brands that can do so. And so you really need to be careful by using that. Otherwise, you're really trying to improve your image. And if it's not a very proper good image, then it's a case of greenwashing. The fourth example is the lack or absence of information. So this is an example for the airport of Lyon. I'm not going to enter the debate of a carbon neutral airport. This is a bit outrageous, but that's not the point. Just to highlight that you have an ad like that or communication like that is a carbon neutral airport, but how can we, and we already talked about that, citizens know whether it's true or not? And so when you're doing that, you really need at least to add a redirection to a website, to a video, whatever, but to something to help us as citizens to understand whether it's true or not. And so either you put it on the ad, either you at least put a redirection to a website. Otherwise, it can be a case of greenwashing. And so this is usually the type of greenwashing that happens due to lack of information. The fifth one, off-topic focus. This is also something that is really, really common. So this is an example from an airline company that basically did a press campaign to talk about the fact that they are the first single-use plastic-free flight in the world. The fact that it's a greenwashing case, it's not because they're doing that, because it's quite great to stop using plastic, of course. The fact that it's a greenwashing case, it's because they are doing an external communication on that. I mean, they are trying to put the spotlight on something they're doing well, in this case, the fact that it's plastic-free, without talking about the main impact of an airline company. In the case of an airline company, I mean, the main impact comes from plane, and the impact of plastic is like ridiculously small. Sorry. And so by doing so, you are trying basically to put the spotlight on something that you're doing great, while the main impact of the company is really bad. And so the solution in this case, it's either not to do an external communication if your company has like a big impact with your main activity, either you are being transparent and honest, and you also talk about the impact of your company in general, of course. And you saying something like, we are aware that we pollute, that we emit too much CO2, we are going to do many actions to improve our impact, and the first one is this one, and then we're going to do this, and this. So we're going to come back to that later, but transparency and honesty are really key to prevent greenwashing from happening. And the sixth one is basically commitments on the long run without mentioning the current situation. So the classic case is a group that says we'll be carbon neutral by 2050. This is something we need to pay attention to because, again, in this case, it was a video to spotlight that the group will be carbon neutral, but they do not talk at all about the impact today. So again, they are trying to put the spotlight on something that they will do good in the future, but not talking about today. So they try to give a good image while today there is nothing that is done. And so again, you need to be transparent and say, okay, today we pollute too much, but we did a roadmap and we're going to do this, and this to reach the carbon neutrality by 2050. Otherwise, it can be seen as a greenwashing, of course. So these are the 6 cases of greenwashing. You can find them on our website as well, and on the replay. But so, as I said, to avoid greenwashing, there is a single solution in transparency and honesty. If you are honest and transparent, you are talking about your weaknesses, and so you will never be accused of greenwashing because you talk about your weaknesses. And to illustrate that, there is a good example of Brussels-BE project that I shared on social media a few weeks ago. It's the case of a Brussels-BE project, so a Brussels brewery. And so they are saying on their website, it's an imperfect journey. There are things that we do good, others that we do bad. And so they list all the things that they do good and all the things that they do bad. And so they are saying on their website, we emit too much CO2, we are aware of that, but we are going to improve, and so this is what we're going to do. So by doing so, we cannot tell that they are doing greenwashing because they also talk about what they're doing bad. And so they're not trying to give them a better image. So that's the point. Two bonuses. The first one is really recent. It's the case of Burger King. So basically they're using, in this case, the ecological argument while it is required by the law. So it was basically an ad saying new reusable dishware. We found how to make our beverages even better. And so they're basically using the new law that was required to give them, to use it as an ecological argument, basically. But that's something that is against the ethics of advertising, and so it was given a negative note by the ethics jury. And the second bonus is usually unintentional, and it's related to IT. So I will give the floor to Jules to explain that. But it's also an interesting case.
Yeah, that's, I mean, just two cases that we see working on green IT and sustainable IT. So we had first issue was an issue with the orders of magnitude. We were in contact with a company, and we worked on the digital cleanup day. So inviting companies to try to reduce storage and reduce the lead data that are useless. And the issue is that the person in charge of the communication was planning on sending a video by email to explain to her colleagues how to delete emails in order to reduce their IT footprints. And as she didn't, I mean, the person didn't knew the orders of magnitude between a video and an email. Actually, it was counterproductive. There would have been way more impact with the video in itself than deleting 1,000 of emails, for instance. So in that case, it's unintentional. The person in charge of communication doesn't know the impacts, and so that's basically the first issue. Is like, if you don't measure the various impacts with a car, with IT, whatever, you will not be fully aware of how you should communicate and what you should do. That's for the first case. And for the second case, also, I saw a company, I think a UK company on LinkedIn, that said, yeah, we changed all our laptops for brand new laptops that are more efficient when it comes to energy consumption. Again, in order to reduce their IT footprints. And in this case, it's more of an issue of scope. So if you know scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, well, they were planning on paying attention to scope 2, so electricity consumption of their IT fleet. And that's maybe that only stuff they measure, and they don't measure scope 3, and that's okay. But if you look at the big picture, you see that, like Maxime said, and as we say to our members, manufacturing of equipment, in this case laptops, has a huge impact on the environment. And so in this case, even though they don't know about it and they think that they're doing great, changing all the laptops have a huge negative impact. So in this case, it's of course an intentional greenwashing, and that's why we need to train, to raise awareness about all the impacts in each industry, to make sure that people that are working in communication don't go for greenwashing without knowing it. So that was for our example. There's a lot of them, but yeah, you go back.
Great. There's super interesting cases indeed. Sometimes it's unintentional, as you said. I talk quite a lot about the ethics jury, so I'm just a word about that so that you know. So there is an ethics jury in Belgium that is called GEP, and in France that is called GDP. And so it's basically self-regulatory bodies. So it means that it's the advertising sector that basically creates these self-regulatory bodies to make sure that there is no advertising that is basically misleading people. And so quite recently, they also add an ecological part. And so everybody, you or me, can file a complaint when you find an ad that is not respecting the ethics and the rule. And so that's what I did, for instance, for Lufthansa. So that's why they had to remove the ad. So it's a way to try to change things, of course. So yeah, that's it for the greenwashing part. If you have any question afterwards, I would be glad to answer them. So you can maybe move on to the next question, Jules.
Yes, sorry, Maxime. And so yeah, basically from what we saw, you show some good examples, some bad examples of greenwashing. How do we do? So from now, is it like companies that have to change? I know that there's some legal stuff that are coming in. What do we do? How do we do it? How do we change advertising?
Yeah, so if we take back the three main impacts of advertising, product and services, communication, carbon impact, basically the solution is to act on these 3 points. So we're going to have a look at these 3 points, and first the product and services that we spotlight. In this case, I'm going to share with you some examples. There are many legal examples, but also media that start to change things. So on the left, you have the example of the Dutch city of Haarlem. So this city really went quite far in terms of commitment because they basically banned 4 things: fossil fuels, aviation, fuel cars, and industrial meat. And so they ban all these ads in public. So it means out-of-home advertising, like GiveActions, like ads on public transport, etc. So the idea behind that was that all experts say that we need to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And these 4 basically products are the most polluting one. And at the same time, you have a lot of advertising about that. And so people, citizens do not know what to think, and it will not be an incentive to change their behaviors and to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And so that's why they decided to ban all that. In France, since the beginning of this year, we cannot do an ad on fossil fuel, and for gas it will be at the end of June of this year. So France is a bit more advanced than Belgium on this, but that highlights that it's possible to move on this case. And another example from a media, The Guardian, that also decided to ban advertising from fossil fuel firms. So it means that it's possible to try to change basically and to ban some polluting products. This is, of course, probably the most the easiest, I would say, a way to change things on this first part is to ban the advertising from the most polluting products. We are not saying that we are going to ban the use of it, just saying that we ban the advertising of it because it's, of course, an incentive to continue using them. So I think that it's, of course, something that we should all do. Of course, it would be easier just to have the government that decides to do so, but the example of The Guardian is great because it means that we can all, as media, as advertising departments, as agency, start putting a roadmap saying, okay, next year or in 2 years, we stop working with fossil fuel firms. In 4 years, we stop working with aviation firms. In 5 years, fuel cars, etc., etc. I think it's important to create this roadmap to step by step change this impact indeed. The second impact is communication. So one of the solutions is to start using some sentences. In France, again, on all car ads, you need to add at the bottom of the ad this sentence: for short trips, use the bike or walk. So it can be seen as a small step, but still it will be rooted in our mind at some point. And so it's still important to make these behaviors just normal. And that's also something that we did with one of our clients, Back Market. We asked them to add at the end of their ad basically a message saying go refurbished, but only if you need to buy, to have a sober message and not to promote consumption or overconsumption. And so it's also a way on basically ads to change the way we see things and to basically spotlight more sustainable behaviors. And so this is also a case of car sharing. So this is, of course, the case, an ad on car sharing. But what I want to highlight with this example is that we can, when we create an ad, and if you have to show a car, place several people on the car so that it will become normal to see a lot of people in cars to promote car sharing. If you don't have to put to show a car, show a bike so that it will become normal to use the bike. When you want to talk about holiday, do not show a plane, but show, I don't know, a bike or the sea, whatever. The idea behind that is that we need to change the ideals that advertising is creating for many years, and that it's not only like limiting us, but we need to incentivize on the fact that it will be for a better future. Because if we use less cars, fewer cars, the air will be better, our health will be better, there will be less traffic jam, we'll have more time to reconnect with nature, we'll have more time to be ourselves and not to be impacted by advertising. So it's really important to create this new ideal that we are all doing that to improve our society, to improve our life, and not just because we have to meet the climate objectives. Otherwise, it will be difficult to convince everybody, actually. So it's important to really create these new ideals by using advertising. Of course, in terms of communication, it's important to stop using greenwashing because, as we said, it slowed down the transition. And to conclude on this part, we need advertising communication to make the ecological transition desirable and sexy. That's what I just said earlier. We need to make it cool. It's cool to go on holiday with the train and not especially to take the plane. And so this is really important to make it desirable and sexy. And so that will be the biggest challenge, I think, of advertisers and communicators in the coming years. Third impact, the carbon impact. So there was a really good survey by 55 that basically analyzed the carbon footprint of an advertising campaign, quite a big one. And basically there are two impacts when you do an advertising campaign. There is the production of the creative and the broadcasting of it. So we are going to see that there are really ways to decrease this impact for both of them. So let's start with the production. So basically, they analyzed this advertising campaign, and the reference scenario is a team of 20 people that came from Paris to Portugal to shoot basically the ad. And so the 20 people had to take the plane with the materials as well. And so you can see on the right the emissions for each part, and you can see that most of the impact basically comes from transport. It's really common in some creative agency, and so that's why it's super important to raise awareness. But the good thing about that is that they did other scenarios, and as we can see, if we do the shooting, I think in the survey it was less than 1,000 kilometers away, you reduce by 25 tons the CO2 equivalent. If you are not shooting but only using 3D, you reduce it by 28 tons. And if you're just shooting like next door, you only have 1 ton. So it means that it's really possible when you create a creative to reduce quite a lot the impact. And so that's something that can, of course, be important to reduce the impact of advertising in terms of creation. And if we talk about...
Maxime,
yes?
sorry, there's a question in the chat. Someone asked, what do you mean by shooting? So you meant just the fact to produce the video and to shoot the video?
It's like the recording of the ad. So you are going on a place to take some shoots to create an ad, basically.
But it's also the fact that going there.
Yeah, of course. So it's the whole part. So going there, shooting it, recording it, having, of course, the storage, etc. And so, as we can see, of course, it's the traveling that is the most important part. And so that's why at first, when I saw, okay, it can be up to 78 tons, the creation and the broadcasting of an ad, I was like, oh, is it possible? And when you have a look at the survey, but we can see that 30 tons basically comes from the travels. And I was like, no, it's not possible. But when you have a look at big companies, it's really common to do so. And if you see, I don't know, the big, of course, ads from, I don't know, a car or something like that. Sometimes the car is on a beautiful landscape. I don't know, is in the pyramids in Alaska, etc. And so a lot of people go there just to record the ad. So the impact comes from that. And so it's important to stop doing so, of course. Another solution is to use creatives that already exist. If you really want to have a picture of a recording of pyramids, buy it from someone who already have it. It will be easier and better for the planet, of course. So going back to the broadcasting one, so I'm not going to enter too much into details here, but basically the main impact of this marketing campaign comes from videos and social media. And the same thing, they did a reference scenario and other scenarios to see where we can reduce this impact. And so basically the reference scenario was with a 60% Wi-Fi and 40% 4G. And so only on adding basically a targeting on Wi-Fi at 80% instead of 60 can reduce up to 4 tons the impact. So that's a thing, if you work with ISIT, you know it quite well. Wi-Fi pollutes way less than 4G, and so it's better if you can, of course, to put targeting on Wi-Fi. It's possible on some media, so use it when possible. Of course, it can be difficult, like for retargeting campaigns, but for an awareness campaign, you can, of course, just stick to Wi-Fi, and as you can see, it makes a big difference. The third scenario, for the second scenario, the third line, is a reduction of 3 seconds of the video. As you can see, it's also quite a big difference. And the last scenario is a decrease of the resolution, and so it's also a big difference. So if we mix all these solutions, we can really come to a broadcasting that is really less emitting CO2. So it's quite interesting to know these figures. So this is just a comparison for 1,000 impressions. So of course, a video emits way more than did the rest. It's still not that easy to compare, in my opinion, because if you have a video on, I don't know, like MyTF1 or Ovio, whatever, a good video platform, people will see it, you cannot skip it, and so the marketing impact will be higher than on social media, where you need to have, I don't know, 3-4 times more impressions because people do not pay that more attention. So the comparison is not that easy, but the conclusion is still that if it's possible, you can try reduce the use of video, and for instance, using audio ads. The audio ads is really expanding right now, and so it's a great way to reduce the impact as well. So if we take a look at basically the carbon impact, so there are 2 impacts, the creation and the broadcasting. On the creation, really limit travel and reduce the weight of visuals, and for the advertising part, targeting on Wi-Fi, reducing the definition of video, or at least adapting the definition of the video depending on the device. You don't need a 4K video on a smartphone, of course, and using audio instead of video when possible. It's not always possible, of course, but when it's possible, it's better to do so. And so this gave us basically a kind of pyramid of advertising impact. So the idea of this pyramid, just to say that the main objective is to meet climate objective, and so to reduce the consumption and overconsumption. And so to do so, what we need is to build new ideals, new representation of the society that are aligned with the ecological transition. To do so, we need to promote sustainable brands and probably stop promoting polluting ones. We need to have a more responsible communication and, for instance, stop using greenwashing. And at the top, you have the decrease of carbon impact. A lot of players in the advertising industry really focus on the reduce of carbon impact, but if we really want to have an advertising that is really compatible in the future with the ecological transition, we really need to also focus on at the bottom of the pyramid and not only reducing the negative impact. It's also a great way because it consumes too much today, but it's not the only solution, of course. Just to give you an example of what we do at GiveActions to illustrate that. So as I said, our aim is to accelerate the ecological transition by changing the consumption behavior. And so we put in place many actions to have more positive impact. So the first thing that we do is that we select the companies we work with based on their impact. We have a charter and a committee. We also spotlight the carbon impact of the campaign on all our reports. We verify all the ad message to prevent greenwashing. We also use techniques like targeting on Wi-Fi and stuff to basically reduce the carbon impact. 5% of our turnover supports awareness campaign, and we are doing lobbying among the ad players to make the sector evolve. So we are aware that the first part, the selection of clients, is like really a big commitment and that everybody cannot do so. But for the rest, it's really possible. If we do so, all agency, all media can do it. And so I'm hoping that this example can inspire some, because we all need to evolve in order to make this advertising world compatible. So this is it for the presentation. I hope it was interesting for you. We can now move on to the Q&A session. Do not hesitate, of course, to have a look at what we do at giveactions.com. And I'm also quite active on LinkedIn, talking about the advertising world, of course, but also greenwashing and spotlighting impactful companies and product services. So if it interests you, do not hesitate. And Jules, I give you the floor again, and we can move on to the Q&A session.
Yeah, indeed. So for the question, I just activated all the cameras and microphones, so you're now able to activate those and ask your question to Maxime. And just before we start with the first question, yes, the presentation will be shared. We'll come to that after. Marty will be able to ask your question. Thank you again, Maxime, for the presentation. It was super nice. When you spoke about sexy advertising and to make it sexy, we always have had someone who asked me 2 days ago, oh yeah, about eco-design. And the person was asking like, yeah, but can we have like nice websites if we do eco-design? So I'm just going to drop you a website that was designed by Designer Ethic. It's not to make advertising for the company. I don't know them. But it's just to share a website that was eco-designed, so sober, accessible, with ethics when it comes to GDPR and the rest. And so if you just want to see a website that was eco-designed but is sexy, feel free to visit it. Again, it's not advertising from my part. We don't know them, but I felt that it's important for people to see that we can have an eco-design website and that they can be nice. And so on my side, I think that this website is really nice. It's a Belgian company or NGO, I don't know, but it's a super nice website. It's easy to use, it's accessible, and it's sober. So that's just for the example of the sexy advertising. Questions, Jean-François? Just for the record, let's avoid the topic of nuclear. I know it's a huge topic regarding I saw it in the chat. So let's not speak about nuclear. Let's just focus on advertising.
And Max, maybe just stop sharing your screen.
Sorry. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It was one of the most interesting presentations I've seen so far. I had a question. I wanted to know if you had connections with professors of marketing and media in universities, which would allow you to intervene as guest speakers during the courses, because I believe it's very important to educate young generations.
Indeed, I read it quite a few times at in Brussels at TX, which is basically a school for communication, and also at the BAM Student Congress. So basically BAM in Belgium is the Belgian Association of Marketing, and they organize a big event, biggest event of marketing for students. So I had a chance to talk about that also for students, because I share the same view. I mean, the future advertisers and communicators will be key in order to change things. And if they say, okay, I don't want to work for this company, and if everybody in the company says that at a certain time, the direction won't have a choice, of course. So I hope that it will slightly change things. And so that's why, with pleasure, of course, to if you have connection, to have a talk about that in university or schools, whatever.
Thank you.
I saw someone who raised their hand. So I have some question from someone. I need to ask you some question from Raphael, but I will let maybe someone else go for the questions. I will check. So if Marty, I don't know if it's.
Yeah. Hello, Maxime.
Hello.
I didn't understood so well the fact of retargeting Wi-Fi. Can you just explain a bit more? What does it mean exactly?
So basically, my point is that you can use targeting Wi-Fi instead of 4G. For instance, you are delivering and broadcasting a video ad on YouTube, for instance. I mean, not many people watch YouTube with 4G. There are some people, but it's not a big deal if you don't target them. So for like awareness campaigns, it's, I think, important to stop using a 4G. However, when you're doing retargeting, the aim is in advertising to touch them when you can, basically when someone goes on your website and stuff. And so removing 4G can really decrease the marketing results. And so it can be an issue when you add basically this targeting for retargeting. But retargeting usually is not with a video, so the impact is lower as well. So the main impact, as we said, comes from video, and for video, presentation video, awareness video, we can really use for Wi-Fi instead of 4G, so the impact will be higher. That's what I meant.
Okay, but how does it work? It means that this is the guy who send the video who can set the fact that it's not playable in 4G.
Yeah, indeed. I'm not sure that
okay.
it's possible to do so on Facebook ads, for instance, but on basically all the tools that media agency use, it's possible to add this kind of targeting. You can also do it normally on Google. And so basically when you set up your campaign, you can say, okay, I add the targeting on Wi-Fi. Okay.
And so when you do it, if someone is connecting by 4G, he cannot see the ad.
Exactly.
Okay, it makes sense. Okay, thanks.
And I didn't knew about that, so it's nice. And I will send you an email about that, Maxime, because we might try to share this to our members. There was another question, I think. Can Kubra? I don't know if you want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I'm a student at ISIT-BE Management School.
Okay.
And I'm a part of a student association for sustainable economics and management. And I would love to talk to my marketing teachers about you and having you as a guest speaker for one of our courses, if you wish to be part of.
Yeah, with pleasure.
That. Yeah, okay. I will contact you soon about.
Yeah, do not hesitate to contact me on LinkedIn, or you have also my email if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I put the email in the chats. I'll take the question of Raphael. I will ask the question of Raphael in the chat. So the first one was, as we should reduce advertising, would a tax on all forms of advertising would be a good idea, according to you? And so a recent French study from the Belgian Institute shows that it would actually reduce the amount of advertising. So again, should we tax all forms of advertising, according to you?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that taxing all forms of advertising would be a great idea, because advertising can also be used to promote good behaviors and good product services. However, it can, of course, be a solution for some kind of companies' product services. The issue is that, of course, it can be difficult to evaluate which one will have the tax and which won't. So this can lead, of course, to some other issues. But yeah, indeed, I'm not against, of course, a tax on advertising, because it would be a way, in a sense, to tackle the ecological impact that there is behind. So why not? But I would be more eager to have a tax on some products, like polluting products, if we don't stop them, at least having a tax on it to reduce the incentive to have this kind of ads. I think it would be better. But still, I mean, it's a tough question, so I think it's more like a political one, of course.
And the second question from Rafael was, is auto-regulation an adequate model to fight against greenwashing?
Can you repeat, sorry?
So is auto-regulation an adequate model to fight against greenwashing? And I think it meant, I mean,
yeah, for the
is it okay to let companies do, or should we force it?
Yeah, and the ethics jury that is self-regulatory. To be honest, I mean, the bodies like GEP and GDP, it's great that we have them because it's still self-regulatory, and so that means that it's still the industry itself that implemented that. But I think it's not sufficient. I think that we should have, even if it's super tough to do so, we should have a check before the broadcasting, because the issue now with these bodies is that you have an ad that is broadcasted, I don't know, let's say on a billboard outside. The ad is like running for 1 month, great. You file a complaint, and then the body says, okay, it was not following the ethics, you need to stop. But when they say that, the campaign is already over, so the worst is already over us. And so I think it would be really better to check before the broadcasting all the ads to make sure that there is no greenwashing. And then we need all, of course, medias and advertising departments, in French, les régies publicitaires, to check whether it's a case of greenwashing. I know that RMB, so the advertising department of RTBF in Belgium, does that now, and so I think it's a great initiative, and that everybody should do so, because of course, if the big media do not have greenwashing on the media, it would be, of course, better. So I think that self-regulatory was a great start, but now we need to move on to the next phase, and we need either a check, either yeah, that's also something that the European Commission is working on green claims, if you follow that. So I think it's a great start, and that we should indeed implement more than just self-regulatory bodies.
Aurélie is asking, so thank you for the session. In the selection process of the brands you work with, what criteria do you use? Are these criteria public?
Yeah, indeed, it's on our website. But yeah, just to give you a quick overview, so basically there are 2 steps. The first one is that we listed all the excluded activities, like extracting oil, using children to manufacture your products and stuff. And so if a company does that, even if we do not communicate on that, we refuse the company. So it's like excluding activities. Then on the second step, we have a look at the activities that we are going to talk about. And we need to have a majority, of course, of positive impact activities. And the same, we made a non-exhaustive list of activities like second-hand products, better for the health, better for the environment. So it's a positive impact on the society, the environment, health, and the cultural side. So it's not only, of course, the environment. And for the difficult cases, we ask the help of basically the committee that we created to have basically more info and more people analyzing the company, because it's not always that easy to say whether a company is great, and sometimes it's not super great at the moment, but they really started to change. And so this is something that we analyze, of course, as well.
Another question from Vincent in the chat as well. Do you have any tips for finding a job in digital marketing, but for a sustainable company? So how do we spot sustainable company, or yeah, what's the process?
You can have a look if you are Belgian at Meet My Job. It's basically a website where you only have positive impact brands, and so on it you can find jobs not only in marketing, of course, but also on other topics. But it's, I would say, the easiest way to find a job in a good company, in a sustainable company. Otherwise, you can have a look at the good company that exists, and it takes time, of course. So you can follow me also. I spotlight a lot of positive brands, so maybe that some of them are recruiting. But of course, but that's great that you're trying to work for a sustainable company, the search for sense as well. And I hope that you will find one, of course. Good luck, Vincent.
And there's also something interesting in the chat. I don't know if you want to rebound on that, but Valérie said, yes, indeed, greenwashing check should happen at the design, but way before the campaign is done. So it should actually be, to avoid investment in the campaign, to make sure that companies from the start don't do that. So
completely agree. And to be honest, we think of launching a new service to help a creative agency to make sure that when they create a campaign, there is no greenwashing in it. Because I think that, of course, everybody is going to put the fault on someone else, of course. So the media will say, oh, it's the media agency that broadcasts. The media agency will say, oh, it's the fault of the creative industry. The creative industry will say, we try, but it's the fault of the advertiser, you know. So at some point, I think that everybody has a part of responsibility, and so that every player can have his word on that. But that's true that first the creative comes from indeed the advertiser and the creative agency. And so if we manage to avoid greenwashing at this step, it won't of course happen at the next step. So I think it's important indeed to really help creative agency and also to raise awareness among, of course, the advertisers, because sometimes the creative agency are saying, okay, it's not that great, can we change? And the advertiser says, no, it's fine like that. We really go on this side. So that's not that easy to say, okay, but then we don't work together anymore. That's not that easy. So yeah, of course, it's the first step of the creatives on which we should act.
Thank you, Maxime. I don't see any more questions, but I will still let some time to people to take to talk and to ask. Just in the meantime, if someone wants to jump in, totally feel free. But for the rest, it will soon be the end of the webinar. If you want to check the replays, so the replay should be available on the YouTube page of the Institute. It's in the chat. We don't go for full HD. We only go for 720p. So I re-encode all the videos and all the webinars and everything that we record to make sure it's not in full HD, because it's not really useful in this case. But still, and also we try to offer the choice to avoid the video. So if you want also to be able to know what has been done in the previous webinar, we try to, not all the time, but we try to write articles. So you can find already having 3 articles from our webinars on the LinkedIn page of the nonprofits. I think we will write an article in English, maybe with Sarah in Dutch, I don't know yet, about this webinar. So we can try to give some article on that. And of course, you can always check the agenda on our websites. We have upcoming webinars on various topics. So sometimes we present the tools of the Belgian Institute or the other Institute of Sustainable IT. And sometimes we are pleased to have people like Maxime, expert on different topics, to share their knowledge. And once again, it's brought to you by the support of our members. So we thank them again. That's it for the previous and the upcoming webinars. Like I said, you can follow us on LinkedIn. If you need to contact us, please contact us. It's contact at ISIT-BE.org, and we also have a website. You can find the agenda and the upcoming webinars up there. I don't see any more questions. No one interrupted me, so I think it's done. Maxime, I'll let you the last word. So if you have something to say.
Already thank you for the invite, and thank you for your attention and all the questions. Well, it's still an interesting topic.